Hi, I'm Effie. This is What Effie Reads, and this week I am going to do a video that I've seen quite a few people do and I've wanted to do for a while, and that is reading as if it's my full-time job. So reading for 7.5 hours each day, and this vlog's going to be how I get on with it, so enjoy! Since this week I'm going to be primarily focusing on trying to clear through my self-destruct books, the first thing I'm going to do is read a chapter from the remaining 5 books? No, 6. I always forget how numbers work. I'm going to read a chapter from the remaining 6 books to make sure that I'm prioritising them correctly. I have previously read the first chapter of all of the 10 books that were remaining on my self-destruct list, so this will be reading chapter 2. I have read most of the second chapter of From Blood and Ash, so we'll skip that one and go straight on to the number 6 position, which was Through Her Eyes. So I'm going to start my day by reading those second chapters rather, and then I guess I will check back in later. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be working on reading From Blood and Ash today, but you never know. It took me a couple of hours, but I've gotten through the second chapter of the remaining books on my self-destruct list, and I'm officially going to DNF the Unbroken and Little Woodford. Little Woodford, it's so dull, and also like there keeps being things that are like offensive in it, and I'm like I'm not here for that energy. So it's going. I think the thing is, because I could listen to the audiobook, like I could probably tolerate it, but also it's my least favourite of the books on the pile, and life's too short to waste any time on books you're not feeling, so DNF it is. And as for the Unbroken, like for most of the second chapter my intrigue was at 0. The last couple of lines of the second chapter were interesting, but I just don't vibe with books that are so centred around the army. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand that it's meant to be a critique, but I'm just not interested in following the army. And the way that, like, you were meant to understand what the ranks meant, and I was like, I don't care enough to research it. And, like, I don't know where a lieutenant is compared to an officer, compared to a sergeant. I'm like, it's all gobbledygook to me. So that was a nope. And as for the rest of the books, it's all kind of shifted around a bit. I think I'm going to keep From Blood and Ash in its current position, because I was enjoying it when I was listening to the audiobook of chapter 2 yesterday. But then I've moved House of Hollow up because the second chapter was doing a lot more for me. And I think it's the thing of your enjoyment can be impacted by what you're feeling in that moment, and I'm feeling the second chapter a lot more now than when I read the prologue and the first chapter. So that will be the next one I read after From Blood and Ash. And then I would say that I Kiss Shara Wheeler and Through Her Eyes are kind of on equal level, but I don't think I would get as much enjoyment switching between the two and reading that way. So I've put I Kiss Shara Wheeler above Through Her Eyes. But I do think Chloe Green and Shara Wheeler is so annoying. So it's going to be interesting to see how I get on with that. It's almost lunchtime now. Like, it really did take me that long to read those second chapters. But, you know, it feels good having DNF'd 2 of them and having a clear idea about the order I'm going to read these books in. arms agony.
The moment you leave, I feel down again.
So yeah, I'm gonna pop on the From Blood and Ash audiobook for a little bit and do a couple of odd jobs. Also, my McQuiston arrived, so I'll put some B-roll of me unboxing that in there as well.
I wonder where I'll end up next on the corner of hope. So hold my hand tight for a minute. I'll let you know when to let go. You give a little love with a little sun. Everywhere you go, everywhere you're running. You never say a word, even when it hurts. Everywhere you go, everywhere you're smiling. You make it look easy. I don't understand how you can love me the way that I am. You give a little love with a little sun. Everywhere you go, everywhere you're running. I found myself dreaming again. The moment you leave, it goes blank in my head. It feels like my bed is on fire when I'm sleeping alone. So hold my hand tight for a minute. I'll let you know when to let go. You give a little love with a little sun. Everywhere you go, everywhere you're running.
And that is the end of my first day of reading as if it were my full-time job. As you can tell from the lighting, I guess. I read the equivalent of 276 pages today. The vast majority of that was listening to the From Blood and Ash audiobook. I've got a one-time speed, about 9 hours left, so I'm approximately halfway through, a little over the halfway mark. Overall, I'm finding the fantasy elements to be generic. It's fine, it's a junk food book, but the banter is on point. Like, I would be interested to read a Jennifer L. Armentrout that was contemporary, because that's where I think her writing skill would really shine. Like, there's nothing wrong, and I actively like good banter in a romantasy book, but I just think that the fact the fantasy is a bit meh at the moment is overall like, ugh, you know. But then I think, like, the point is the romance, but I'm not sure. Like, maybe I'm getting it backwards, and maybe it's more of a fantasy with romantic elements. I am not sure what the overall intention is, but so far I'm having a reasonable enough time, and it's definitely one of those that, like, it's very pleasant to pop on whilst I do other things. It's not requiring a lot of brain power, and I am intrigued to see where it goes. Although one small thing is that it's throwing me that there's a kind of vampire that I think are called, like, Atlanteans, and I'm like, I don't associate vampires with Atlantis, but fair enough. Also the fact that it's set in Macedonia, and I'm like, that's an actual place. Little confused by that, but yeah, overall it's absolutely fine, I think. And yeah, fine's probably the best descriptor of it, but I'm looking forward to seeing how much I can achieve tomorrow. I think it'll be interesting to see if I get more pages read tomorrow when I'm not shifting between books. But I mean, if I can get 275 pages read each day, that's going to make a massive dent in getting through my self-destruct books. I think it wouldn't quite get me finished. Let me pause and have a look at the numbers. I've just had a look at the numbers, and in order to get my self-destruct read by the end of the week, I would need to read 285 pages each day. I think probably that's a little bit ambitious. Like, my physical reading speed, obviously it varies from book to book, tends to be around 25 pages an hour with some books, but it's more of a rarity than not. I can get maybe as high as 50 pages an hour, but you're talking about like middle grades that have got larger margins, larger font, etc. So once I finish From Blood and Ash and I'm reading with my eyes, I expect that I'll probably get through around 200 pages a day if I'm lucky. But I guess we'll see when that occurs, which will be tomorrow, because I think I've got about 4.5 hours at the speed I'm listening to. But for now, I'm going to chill out and enjoy my evening. So I'll see you in the morning. Good afternoon. It may not look like afternoon because I'm still in my jammies and my dressing gown, but it's cold, so why not? I went straight into it this morning and I listened to what was left of From Blood and Ash whilst adding some more stuff to my Vinted. I'm maybe about 2/3 of the way through adding stuff to Vinted, but the rest of the books that I need to read this week I don't have as audiobooks, and since they're all on my self-destruct list, it feels wasteful to try and get the audiobooks just to get through them, especially because I feel optimistic about getting through them this week. So, finish From Blood and Ash. I would say that it got much better once it got to the end. It was a little bit insta-lovey, a little bit whiplash. I'm not completely sure I understand the lore. It got very confusing with the fact that things aren't called what words usually mean. Like, I'm not sure if, I don't know, like, the fact that Atlanteans aren't, like, mer people or Selkies or anything to do with water is a bit confusing. I'm not sure I understand the different creatures. But, like, it was much better in the second half. I do think I do think the first 200 to 250 pages were just kind of bump, and I don't think it added all that much to the story. But I'm probably going to be continuing the series. If I'm honest, I only added it to my self-destruct because I was like, I own 2 special edition copies of this book. I need to actually be sure if I want to own 2 special edition copies of this book. And I was already pretty certain I was going to continue with the series, even though I have heard kind of mixed things about it. But that's another one ticked off my list. And I'm officially halfway through. Although with me having removed Little Woodford and the Unbroken from my self-destruct list yesterday because they don't interest me, I think I've only got 4 books left. Let me check. No, I only have 3 books left. So that's pretty promising. So after I finish filming this clip, I've got about 2.5 hours left until the end of my day. So I'm going to be cracking on with House of Hollow. I am 22 pages in. So I've got about 270 pages left, I think. Yeah, roughly 270 pages. I'm going to guess I might get about 75 pages read, but we'll see how this afternoon goes. And I'll at least update at the end of the day to tell you how many pages I've read, but I may pop in at other points if I have thoughts or just want to pop in. Excuse the funny angle, I've just kind of lent you against the picture that's on my wall. But, you know, chaos! So, it's the end of my second day, reading as if it were my full-time job, as if that were a real job. And today I managed to read the equivalent of 313 pages. It is worth noting that for the majority of the day, I was reading From Blood and Ash, which was an audiobook, and I listen to audiobooks at 2 times speed, and that is significantly quicker than my reading speed when I'm reading with my eyes. So after I finished From Blood and Ash, I moved on to House of Hollow, and I managed to read roughly 100 pages, which is a lot more than I usually get through, but like I'm determined that when I say I'm going to do 7.5 hours in a day, I'm going to do that. Like if I get distracted for 5 minutes, I'm tagging it on to the end of my day because I need to actually read for 7.5 hours, which is bonkers. But I also think that House of Hollow is one of those books that reads quite quick, like it's formatted in such a way that makes it a bit easier to get through. So, I mean, I would be surprised if I didn't finish it tomorrow because I've got less than 200 pages left. And speaking of, well, I don't know actually where I was going with that, but in order to finish the remaining 3 books on my self-destruct list, that's House of Hollow, Through Her Eyes? Yeah, Through Her Eyes by Sophie Fahy, and I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. In order to finish all 3 of those by the end of Friday, I need to read 275 pages approximately each day, which I definitely think is going to be a push because we're working off the assumption that I get through roughly 25 pages an hour. Obviously, House of Hollow, I got through more than 25 pages in an hour, but if we're working off that assumption, then so how many hours is that? 22 and a half. Alexa, what's 25 times 22 and a half?
25 times 22.5 is 562.5. By the way, you have 2 new notifications. Do you want to hear them?
No, thank you. Okay, so if I only get through 25 pages an hour for the remaining 22 and a half hours that I have for reading this week, I'll still have about 300 pages to read, which is not ideal, but also that's like 1 book, and I know that even at the pace of 25 pages an hour, I can read that in a couple of days if I focus and get down to it. And part of the point of doing this is to try and blast through what's remaining on my list. So yeah, that was my day. It went quite well. It'll be interesting to see how I get on tomorrow when I'm only reading with my eyes, because I think it's going to be a struggle for me to actually physically read for 7.5 hours in a day, but I'm determined to do it. So I guess see you in the morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's a really dreary day today, so I'm thinking I'm going to do my reading on the sofa today, because why not? So we're starting off with House of Hollow, and probably that's what I'm going to read all day, because if we're working off the assumption that I get through about 25 pages an hour and I've got just under 200 pages left, yeah, that's probably going to be me for the day. But I may pop in a few times to give updates. But right now, I'm just going to get stuck into my book. It's lunchtime and I am so ready to eat. I'm currently frying some halloumi. Oops, need to turn that. One sec. Sorry about that. That was cooking a lot quicker than I expected. So I'm making a bagel with halloumi for my lunch because I didn't know what else to have, basically. So I'm like, I think I made 100 pages of progress this morning on House of Hollow, which is a lot more than I expected. This book I'm just zooming through, which is fantastic. I'm having a really good time. It's got a really good sense of like dark whimsy, kind of like Pan's Labyrinth or The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, and I'm just so here for it. And it's really interesting that there's this location called St. Anthony's Chapel, and I was reading it going, I feel like I've seen this place, and I went through my photos from my trip to Edinburgh in August, and I have a photo of the location. It's not incredibly obvious because it's like a landscape wide shot, but just kind of on the edge of the image I can see St. Anthony's Chapel, the location that's mentioned, so that's pretty exciting. And yeah, just generally having a great time. The exception being that I don't know if this is something that other people pick up on, but you know, sometimes you'll be reading a book and you'll be like, this author isn't from this place. And it's not a lot. There's maybe like 3 or 4 times this has happened, but there's been a mention of something and I've gone, yeah, they're not British. They, like, it's little things like at one point Iris is drinking some cider but describes it as apple cider. There's one point where a character is talking about grey as a colour rather than a person, and they use the American spelling. Like, I get it was meant to differentiate. I think that's my halloumi done. I'll try and talk quicker. I get it's meant to differentiate between grey the person and grey the colour, but like that isn't how it worked, and I think there was something else, but yeah, generally good time, but there's a few things that are just slightly off. That's day 3 complete. I had quite a nice day, just kind of snuggling up on the sofa and reading. I will say I was feeling kind of distracted for the latter half of the day. I think partially because House of Hollow ended up being so good. I really enjoyed it, and it really surprised me, especially because it was so low on my list of priorities when it came to my self-destruct. And I ended up just absolutely adoring her. So going into Shara Wheeler, that was already a lower priority, lower intrigue, you know, was a bit of a shock to the system, but also I'm not enjoying the character that you're following. Like, the character of Chloe Green is so annoying. She's so deeply not like other girls, and it's kind of painful to read. But also, like, I do have a level of intrigue. I have suspicion. So one of my theories, and this will get edited out if I end up being correct. So if it's in, it's incorrect. One of my theories is that where Shara Wheeler has gone is one of those conversion camps where they kidnap the kids. I think they mostly occur in America, but I'm not sure. That's what I think's happened, but I guess we'll get to the bottom of it as I proceed. So today I managed to read 234 pages, which honestly was a lot more than I expected. And in order to finish the 2 books that I've got remaining, so Shara Wheeler and Through Her Eyes, I need to read just under 300 pages a day, tomorrow and Friday, which is not likely to happen. But if I can read the same amount that I read today, tomorrow and Friday, I think I'll be fairly pleased, because that'll be me almost done with my self-destruct list. But for now, I'm just going to have a bit of a chill, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good morning. So I realised that I forgot that I'd read The Girl in the Storm, which is like an extra chapter from Gray's point of view, for House of Hollow. So I actually read 10 more pages than I said I did last night, which I think means that I read 244 pages yesterday. I'll pop it on screen if I'm misremembering numbers, but that's pretty exciting. That was slightly more than I thought it was. And then I've managed to find the audiobook for Shara Wheeler, which I think will help me move forward with it, because it's been a struggle reading it. I think Chloe Green's just such a difficult character to be in the head of for the book, basically. So I'm going to pop that on whilst I list the last of my items on Vinted. Hey, so it's lunchtime and I finally managed to upload all of the books that I wanted to list on Vinted to Vinted, and I've also finished I Kissed Shara Wheeler. Unfortunately, it wasn't a hit for me, and it's making me wonder if Casey McQuiston is the author for me. Like, I enjoyed Red, White and Royal Blue when I read it, but One Last Stop was just okay, and I Kissed Shara Wheeler just didn't really do it for me. But I am incredibly aware that I Kissed Shara Wheeler is YA, and it's also like YA for a very, very specific audience. And I think like there's so many reasons why this book isn't for me, because I think one of the things that this book is setting out to do is show a kind of like acceptance for queerness, especially when it comes to religion, and that queerness can exist alongside faith. And I just I'm not the reader for that, because I already have that intrinsic belief. So whilst I may not have faith now, when I did, I never saw a conflict between faith and queerness, so it made for a very challenging book. And through conversations I've had with people as I was reading I Kissed Shara Wheeler, I think it's the kind of book that resonates more if you had a harder time with your queer identity because society is rubbish. And also I think there's meant to be nuance with a character who seems confident in their queerness but isn't, because they're in a hyper-religious environment. But I didn't get that because it just didn't quite work for me. And again, this is a YA book, so as an adult I don't feel fully qualified to be critiquing it. That's not to say that I think YA books are not for adults, but I think if I'm critiquing it on something like the fact that thematically it doesn't work for me, I need to take a step back and go, yeah, but maybe that's because I'm a grown adult. I think in a wider way, the reason that this book didn't work beyond the themes and stuff was that being in the head of Chloe, even though this book is third person, it's third person specifically following Chloe's journey. And being in the head of Chloe just did not work for me because she just came across as not very nice, and you end up not rooting for her, you actually are rooting for her downfall. So yeah, it didn't work for me at all. And I think probably what I'll do is when Casey McQuiston's fourth book comes out, I'll give that a try. And if that also doesn't work for me, I think possibly they're going to be an author that I put to one side and say they had one book that worked for me, but beyond that, not really. So now I'm on to reading Through Her Eyes, which is the last book on my self-destruct list, which is really exciting actually, because I can't believe I'm almost done. This is shocking. So just a quick little update before I get on with my evening. today I managed to read up to page 150 of Through Her Eyes, which means that I only have around 200 pages left to read, and then that's my self-destruct finished. I'm so excited. It's mind-boggling that I've managed to achieve so much this week. Like, obviously a lot of it is thanks to audiobooks, but it's yay. So in total today I've read the equivalent of 384 pages, which I think is pretty impressive. As I say, most of that is due to audiobooks, but still feels good. Good morning. It's Friday, which means it is the last day of this week where I read as if it were my full-time job. It's been fun, but a lot more exhausting than I expected. Like, I read a lot anyway, but I don't think I quite realised how much it would take out of me to have the level of focus required to read as if it were my job. But it's pretty exciting because the only thing I've got left on my self-destruct list is Through Her Eyes, and I've only got about 200 pages left, which feels doable today. Like, I wouldn't normally say that, but I think I'm getting through about 30 to 35 pages of it an hour. So to finish 200 pages in 7.5 hours at that rate feels like I can actually achieve it, which is amazing. And then I will have officially completed my self-destruct list, which is not something I actually expected to do this week, so that is just amazing. I am shocked. So, thoughts on Through Her Eyes so far. Unfortunately, I don't think it's giving what I thought it was going to. The blurb made me think it was going to be more of a revenge plot, maybe have like vigilante justice, but instead it's just kind of whiny. I also think that the book just isn't handling things quite right. Like, the way that it talks about SA is just not it, and also the blindness feels a bit so. So when it comes to the essay, rather than calling it what it is and even like acknowledging it, and I get there's likely an element of kind of kidding herself, but rather than saying that, she'll say, "Oh, I can't remember if I had sex. Oh, I might have had sex whilst not conscious." And I'm like, that's not how it works. Okay. So that's really uncomfortable. And then the blindness, it's very difficult for me to judge it, but it feels somewhat inconsistent, and that the rules for her sight loss vary from moment to moment, which is a shame because I feel like this is a story that in a more skilled hand could be interesting, and I guess like important's probably too strong a word, but having a YA book where a character's kind of coming to terms with that and everything else that surrounds how she lost her sight could be really interesting. And yeah, I don't know what else I was going to say there, but I'm just going to get cracking on reading now. So it's lunchtime. I've only got a few more hours left until the end of my week, and I'm looking forward to it. As I was saying earlier, it's surprisingly exhausting doing this. So I'm at around the 230 page mark of Through Her Eyes. I think the writing's pretty substandard, but it's reading quick enough. Like, it's reading really actually incredibly quick. So like, no harm me continuing. And like, the story is interesting enough, but I wish it were written by a better, more skilled author. And since this book is reading so quickly, and like I expect we finish it in the next couple of hours, which just blows my mind. I think what I'll do if I finish is that I will pick up Palestine by Joe Sacco. I'm already a little bit of the way through, but I've been like meaning to read it for a while. So since I finished my Self-Destruct, and that was as far as my plans for the week went, I might as well end my week with a graphic novel. Hey. So I have successfully finished, where did I put my glasses? Oh, I can see them. I've successfully finished Through Her Eyes, and honestly, I hated it. I think the writing was subpar. The story itself, with a more skilled author, could have been really good, but unfortunately I just don't think that, especially as a debut author, the author had the skill to pull off what she was trying to pull off. I am going to hold up my hand and give a little bit more detail in spoilery terms why I hated this book. So if you don't want to be spoiled for this book, just skip ahead until I'm no longer holding up my hand. So essentially the reason that I hated it as much as I did was the fact that in the final chapter you get a flashback to what actually happened the night that our main character Alyssa was attacked. I realised that I haven't really talked much about this story previously in this video, but essentially our main character Alyssa goes to a party. She's 17 years old, so you know, underage drinking. She gets drunk at the party, and then you don't know if she's been essayed or not. Like, she wakes up at one point, like, she remembers being dragged up to this room, and then doesn't remember anything after that. Wakes up with her dress around her waist, and then she goes down to the garage, and she ends up being hit over the head and laundry detergent thrown in her face. And as a result of that, she becomes blind, or is becoming blind. It's a little poorly executed, that aspect of the story. But essentially, that's what happens. But then in the final chapter of the book, you get a full picture of just what happened when she was attacked and the immediate aftermath. And I thought, oh, cool, we're going to have this final twist that maybe another character that you didn't realise was involved, or something else. But it was even worse than that. The twist was she didn't survive the attack. So the final words of the book were that Alyssa died when she was attacked. So ugh. And the thing is, right, this book is not executed like she was a ghost or anything like that. She just died. So from page 27, when the attack first happens, until the final page of the book, none of that actually happened, which I get what the author was trying to do. She was basically trying to have a seize every moment whilst you can. You never know what's going to happen sort of situation with the story. But unfortunately, it was just so poorly executed. And I think the fact that you're basically told that none of it happened, so she didn't get justice, you don't know 100% if she was essayed or not, because the conversation where she got told that she hadn't been essayed never happened because she was dead. Like, oh, it was so aggravating. And I'm just so mad about it. But anyway, that's that book done, which means I have officially finished my self-destruct list, which is an incredible feeling. I have a lot more hours left in my day than I expected. So I think my plan is to try and finish Palestine by Joe Sacco. I can't remember if I mentioned earlier that it was something I was thinking about doing. I've got 202 pages left, so hopefully that's doable. This style is such that some pages you have like basically like an A4 page of text, so it's very difficult to judge how quick it's going to read. But I think if I do manage to finish it before the end of my working day, I'll just give myself a cheeky early finish because it's Friday. But I guess we will see. But it's been such a good week, even if it is a bit exhausting, and I'm kind of ready for it to be over. So my week has finally come to an end. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to finish Palestine today. I just wasn't in quite the right headspace to continue it, so I didn't get it finished. But I did manage to read 318 pages today, which, it's makeup, which I feel pretty happy about. Like, that's nothing to be sniffed at, even if some of those were graphic novel pages. In terms of conclusions from this week, reading like it's your full-time job, if you actually like take it as like if it were your job, you'd have to focus on it, you'd have to put in the hours, you couldn't just get distracted and look at your phone every 5 minutes. It's really darn hard. And what else? In terms of self-destruct, I think I know my tastes pretty well. Like, I think I mentioned earlier in the week that the way that I did my self-destruct list this year was that I put on 6 books and my best friend put on 6 books, and I'm pretty sure the books that I put on for myself, 3 of them I ended up DNFing. I'm trying to I always forget what books I put on for myself. No, I can't remember, but I know that the 3 books that I DNF'd were the ones that I put on. So I think it's a case of self-destructs are just a way of me holding on to books that I'm probably not going to want anyway. But I guess we'll get more into that next month when time for looking at the next year and my goals for the next year comes round. The other thing that I can take away from this week is the fact that I would say like 90% of the time, based on the first chapter, I have a good idea of what I'm going to feel about the book, but every so often a book will surprise me. Like House of Hollow, I didn't like it in the first few chapters, although perhaps that was because it gave a vibe of not being set in England, so I had to recalibrate my brain. But I ended up absolutely loving that book. So overall, I've had a really good week. I will pop on screen here the total number of pages that I read this week. It's a lot more than I expected I would read, considering my reading speed, although a lot of that is down to audiobooks, which are super helpful. Okay, I have literally no idea where the rest of my outro went, but I think I've said all I wanted to say in this video. I had a good time. I guess common thoughts on any of the books I read this week. So just to remind you of the books that I read this week, they were Through Her Eyes by Sophie Fahy, which I'll be unhauling. I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston, which I'll be unhauling. From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which I'm going to be keeping for now. House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland, which I don't have with me because I took it to Edinburgh to take photos of with the ruins that I mentioned earlier in the vlog. But House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland, and also Palestine by Joe Sacco. But that's all for me today, so until next time, love you! Bye!